by the way. So it's kind of shocking to see that through most of my school childhood, I had Billy Packer and Tim McCarver calling national games pretty much for college basketball and baseball. I am not the biggest fan of either in their announcing, but I respect both contributions to the game. What Tim McCarver contributed to the game is more than anybody will ever have imagined in the world of announcing. A man who has done 26 World Series on 3 different networks. Sorry, Pedro, NBC not part of that. I have to remember when I'm doing my research. It's ABC, CBS, and Fox. And a man who contributed in many ways to both local baseball teams in announcing, and of course was a very big announcer for the Cardinals, and of course a player for the Cardinals. So he means much to the Midwest, as he does to the Northeast, as he does to everything else. It's kind of shocking to see some of my childhood go away very quickly over the last few years, but in just the span of almost 15 months, John Madden, Billy Packer, and Tim McCarver, who have called endless championships in the spring and this fall and spring and winter, have passed away. Any questions before we start, guys? Jake Kaplan, Deputy Strait with me, of course, as always.
Good.
No. Yeah, good afternoon. No questions here. It's just Tim McCarver, obviously, for me, watching him with Al-Qaeda doing Mets games with WRTV, and then later on with the late great Bobby Mercer for Fox 5 when he did Yankee games. A big part of some memorable moments. You think about the Mets clinching the division 86 and 88. And with the Yankees, Tim McCarver, I think of David Cohn's perfect game on a warm Sunday afternoon against the then Montreal Expos. I just remember running from the deli on the corner because he had the game on, and seeing that David Cohn didn't allow a single base runner through 7.5 innings, and running home to see if he'll complete that, if he'll finish off the perfect game. It was just he's been part of a lot of great memories. Whether as a baseball fan and being a viewer, growing up as a kid, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, spent 21 years in the majors as a player, came up in 59, retired after 80, had caught 2 of the greatest pitchers to ever set foot on a mound, Bob Gibson and Steve Carlton, played in World Series as well as called World Series. I mean, worked across generations, not only as a player, but also as a broadcaster, calling games with both Jack Buck and then, 18 World Series with his son, Joe, on the national side. So, I mean, it's a man who had a terrific first act in baseball and followed that up with arguably maybe even a better second act after his playing days were over. You talk about the great color commentators and now analysts, whatever term you want to use to describe the guy who sits next to the play-by-play guy. He's one of the best to ever, get in front of a microphone. And I grew up, watching and listening to those same calls as Anthony did across, both local teams. And, he was a touchstone in a lot of ways, for memories that we all have of both, the Yankees and the Mets, as well as, across national coverage. So it's a sad day for baseball. He's definitely going to be missed.
Yes, I'm Steve Rabinowitz, and welcome to the mid-season, or in this case, All-Star break
season
NBA. It's the All-Star break NBA report of all the sports lines. I feel like mid-season is completely different nowadays. All right.
Yeah, so Super Bowl's kind of pushing that back.
Yeah. So before we head over to the friendly confines, I mean, really friendly racist confines of Salt Lake City, as we talk NBA on its All-Star weekend and also talk Knicks, Nets, Eastern Conference, Western Conference. And as we had Anthony's first favorite sport last week in bashing Kyrie Irving, we're going to talk LeBron James, which gives us Anthony's second favorite sport, bashing Jordan stands. So that's coming up on today's show. But first, we're going back to Glendale. I'm going back to Glendale. Eagles championship? I don't think so. Thanks to a Harrison Butker kick with 10 seconds left in regulation, it was Chiefs 38, Eagles 35 in Super Bowl 57. A James Bradbury holding call for Philly made sure that there was no possible chance for that Jalen Hurts response. And so the only consolation prize for the Eagles in scoring the most points ever in the Super Bowl sorry, the only consolation prize for the Eagles is scoring the most points ever in a Super Bowl L. For Kansas City, it's 2 championships in 4 years. For Philadelphia, it's yet another major sport regular season second place trophy. Yes.
I didn't realize how many they had in the past calendar year.
And,
yeah, they've had quite a few.
And the Sixers are on a possibility to make it more. And we have a mini Mahomes dynasty on the way, which means more Jackson Mahomes on TikTok. You created this monster. Now you deal with the consequences. Okay, what takes the Super Bowl? What's your sum up the Super Bowl 57 experience?
Well, it sucks that a defensive holding call is what, people, mostly Eagles fans, will hold on to, no pun intended, as the takeaway from this game. The call was legit. And as I always say, if it's a penalty in the first quarter, then it's a penalty in the fourth quarter. And for all those who say that the refs should lose their flags and whistles late in a close game, especially when the Lombardi is on the line, because the players should decide the game and not the officials. Well, if they see an obvious penalty, one that the culprit freely admitted to after the game. Thank you for, owning up, James Bradbury. And they don't throw the flag. Well, then they are deciding the game, but for the offending team as opposed to the offended team. That aside, the things I'll take away from this game are Patrick Mahomes doing Patrick Mahomes things, leading the Chiefs to a pair of fourth quarter touchdowns. They scored on all 4 of their second half possessions to seal the victory, and to do it on a pair of plays, having Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore basically walking into the end zone on those 2 touchdowns, that exploited a tendency in the Eagles defensive scheme that they saw the Jags take advantage of all the way back in week 4. And offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, who looks like he's on track to have that same job with the Commanders, he showed the Jags play to the coaching staff during Super Bowl prep week. Chiefs added it as another layer to their jet motion package, and they used it when the time came. Great coaching by Andy Reid, who, like Mahomes, added to his legacy with this win. I'll remember Tony's 65-yard punt return to set up the first fourth quarter touchdown. I'll remember running back Jerick McKinnon listening to Fox analyst Greg Olsen and getting down at the 1-yard line instead of realizing pretty much every kid's dream to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. There's a tweet that I came across by KC Varsity Combines that summed it up perfectly, and here's the tweet. McKinnon could have spent the rest of his life telling his children and grandchildren about the time he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I'm sure he has dreamed of that moment since he was a child and knows he may never get the opportunity again. Instead, with 1 minute left, he chose to sacrifice that accomplishment to better the chances that all of his teammates get a ring. I will always be a fan. This is a picture that should be put up in every high school gym in the country. I can't argue with that. Mahomes is just entering his prime, and Reid shows no signs of slowing down. Look, I admit it. I bought into the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl hype this year, but I have to do a mea culpa and give the Chiefs their due. They've shown everyone that no matter who the AFC flavor of the year may be, the road to the AFC title game and a trip to the Super Bowl will continue to go through Arrowhead for the foreseeable future.
To be honest, Jerick McKinnon, by the way, only got that because Ahmad Bradshaw was just accidentally falling down into the end zone 11 years earlier. Otherwise, he would have just been continuing the trend. Anthony, what do you think?
Well, there's 2 things I'll take away from the Super Bowl. Number one, the grass was a complete. The field was a complete mess.
Field was awful.
$800,000 for a grassy slip and slide is not exactly what the NFL or the players had in mind, but that's exactly what we saw. I heard more Tacoma 1 than I ever heard in previous 2-3 years, and that was the grass that was used and grown for almost 2 years. And obviously, State Farm Stadium has this grass strain to take it out into the sun. It was just a complete mess, and there was players slipping nonstop throughout the game. I do wonder if Bradbury's grab of Juju Smith-Schuster, if the turf had anything to do with it, because planting and obviously changing cleats was about the biggest story of the Super Bowl as the players themselves, and we saw that, and it was even worse after Rihanna's halftime show that kind of did more damage to an already beat up and chewed up dirt grass field. So the NFL really gonna have to figure out what to do as far as maintaining Super Bowl fields, because I remember several years ago in Levi Stadium there was an issue with the grass, and next year it's going to be in Las Vegas with already a grass field as well. So the NFL is going to have to come up with something with that. But the other thing I took away from the Super Bowl was the performance of the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. I mean, you think about this: the Eagles had 70 sacks, third all time in NFL history. 4 guys with double-digit sacks, and they had 0 sacks on Patrick Mahomes, who was basically playing on one leg.
1.5.
Coming into the game, it was more like 3/4 of a leg after he re-injured it in the second quarter. But the fact that the offensive line did such a great job, and think about the Super Bowl 2 years ago when they played Tampa Bay, and Mahomes was basically running for his dear life for 4 quarters, and going back to last Sunday and seeing the offensive line holding up big time, being able to open up a running game that wasn't explosive but effective enough to where it allowed Patrick Mahomes to get a little more time. The linebackers had to be a little more honest as far as playing the run and dropping the coverage. So the offensive line did did an amazing job. I hope that doesn't get overlooked. But also Andy Reid. I think that Andy Reid's always been one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. Beating his former team, keep that in mind, in the Super Bowl, but to lead 2 different teams in the Super Bowl and now winning his second one with Kansas City. And look, I hope he gets all the cheeseburgers and corn dogs. So, yeah, by the way,
okay, Terry Bradshaw.
Nice guy. Pretty nice to put his favorite food as a play call. But the Chiefs, and you explained, Jay, the Chiefs exploited a tendency of the Eagles' secondary of passing off receivers when they go in motion. It's a John Madden football trick if you're a video game nerd.
Oh, really? Interesting.
You were seeing your receiver in motion, and the defense that the other team, whether it was a player or a computer call, would tip off what coverage they were playing. If it's man to man,
whether they follow him all the way across or pass him all.
If it's man zone, he's going to stop and pass it off to the other guy on the other side of the field. So that way you would call audible and you call a hot route and adjust that way. I mean, if you play online, you win a lot of games that way. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it was really funny that the Chiefs pulled it off twice on opposing sides of the hash marks.
Yeah.
Just a great Super Bowl all around. I know a lot of people are not happy with the ending, but look, penalties are penalty. Bradbury could commend him for owning up to making a huge mistake at a bad time. But it's still great. It was a great game, great Super Bowl nonetheless.
Should have let him score. I think it was just not a smart play, and you don't touch the receiver at that play because also there was no shot. There wasn't. It wasn't a definite. It was a definite possibility that Juju would not have caught that ball. By the way, because it looked like it was overthrown. So in that situation, you need to remember that you can get. It's better to get the ball back down 7 than to have to go for a game-winning field goal late in the game when not getting the ball back. So I'm going to remember. By the way, the funny thing about those 2 plays is Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, who caught those touchdowns, only catches in the game for both of them. We know that Toney had the big return, but he only had 1 catch in that entire game. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, also their only target of the game as well. So what I'm going to remember in the Super Bowl is 2 things. Number 1, the fact that the Chiefs had a better rushing day than the Eagles altogether because Isaiah Pacheco went for 76 yards and a touchdown and really allowed the Chiefs to have the balance that the Eagles didn't. McKinnon also had a couple of big plays. In fact, Kenneth Gainwell was the only one who even went for 20 yards. Miles Sanders had for 16. Boston Scott pretty much inconsistent. And that is leading to my next point is Jalen Hurts looked like a superstar who was about to get a lot of money with his Super Bowl performance, possibly one of the best in a Super Bowl loss in history. 27-38, 304 yards. This is a guy who was injured in week 15 this season, and didn't look like, we talked about it last week on the show, didn't look like he was anywhere ready to be a superstar. We said, hey, let's have Jalen Hurts pass. That there's no way you can win if you have Jalen Hurts pass more than 35 times. He went for 38 attempts and went 27 for 38 for 304 yards, a touchdown, and the 103.4 quarterback rating. And oh yeah, he also had 15 rushes for 70 yards and tied Terrell Davis for most rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl. That's right. Lamar Jackson is going to take that video and be like, this is what happens when you have a dual threat quarterback who I think I'm better than, and to a Super Bowl.
So what you're saying
all
is
the
you
money
just
in the
made
world.
Lamar Jackson a whole lot of money. That's what you're
I
saying?
think it's going to make him a whole lot of money too, because there's a very good possibility that Jalen's going to get the bag before Lamar gets the bag, because Philly, there's no way you could put too much of this loss on Jalen Hurts. And yes, he had the fumble that led to a Kansas City score in the second quarter, but again, we go back to the field and we go back to just the fact that he never seemed like he had his balance on that play. And so it was a very weird play, and a fluky play. It's a play that kept the Kansas City Chiefs in the game, by the way, because there's a good possibility that they're down 17 at halftime instead of the 10, which for Patrick Mahomes is just a Tuesday, apparently being down 10 going into any
Morning
Super
ride
Bowl.
to work.
Yeah, but overall, though, I had to be. I was very impressed by Jalen Hurts. I'm very impressed by the performance he had in the Super Bowl, and I think Mahomes ended up having a better performance. Mahomes only missed one pass in the second half, almost a perfect half. Went 21 for 27 for 182 yards. And Mahomes, by the way, might be the first person who ever is more powerful on one leg than he is on two legs. I am now very convinced of it after watching his last two games. But I think the other thing we mentioned, this was the Super Bowl that ended up being the best. We thought these were the two best teams going into the regular season, and sometimes we don't get that in the national championship game, or in this case, the Super Bowl. We got it, and it was a very good game. Sure, the holding is going to kind of demolish it a tiny little bit in terms of where this stands at the greatest Super Bowls of all time. But the only thing I had a problem with, and we can always talk to Joe about this during the season, it's not when to call it. It's the fact that holding never gets consistently called during the game to begin with. I think overall, if Bradbury never touched that jersey for a second time, that play doesn't get called. It's not about what time of the game it is. It's, did this play look obvious enough like holding to call? And the answer to that was yes. And I think at that point, you have to call it at that point.
Yeah, and Rabbi, you and I saw it together, as when we were watching the Super Bowl. And the thing that stood out to me is that obviously for some reason, I don't know why, Fox couldn't find the angle that showed the right hand making the initial grab. I don't know why we never got that angle during the game, because that was,
and the refs would have not seen it from that angle, because I believe that penalty was thrown from the other side of the field.
Maybe, I don't recall. You may be right about that. But I mean, as you and I realized upon the replay, we thought, I initially thought he used the right hand, which we couldn't see, but it clearly grabbed it again with the second. And when you essentially do hold with both hands,
it has to be called.
You're going, one of the officials is going to call it. The fact that, Bradbury had gotten away with holding calls earlier in the game, and it was the first defensive holding call of the game. It was basically a penalty-free game. Does that mean the game was essentially clean, or that players were getting away with things? Probably a little bit of both. But that's the thing. If the official sees it and it's obvious to him that it is a penalty, the call has to
call it. You got to call it.
And by the way,
not a situation.
Yeah, and by the way, I watching Inside the NFL. If you have Paramount Plus, they have the NFL Films video and footage for Inside the NFL, and NFL Films actually captures the angle where Bradbury on Juju's initial route grabs his jersey just as he's breaking away towards the sideway, and it actually freezes the moment when he grabs it, and the penalty came from the defensive side of the field. So clearly, the line judge on that end saw the grab.
Yep.
The initial grab, and I said it out in our group text. I was like, that had to be where the penalty came from, the initial break out of the route, because it was the same call that they used inside the 5 on the two touchdown plays. and Bradbury looked like he got fooled yet again. And just out of desperation, trying to grab him to try to keep him from breaking away. And I was like, look, if it's too obvious, the refs are going to call it, even under those circumstances. And the view that NFL film saw, it was a pretty obvious holding penalty that had to be called.
It's all about obvious sometimes, and not about going to your seventh different angle. Sometimes you can easily see it on the
film. I think people was reacting to when they were running up the field when there was minimal contact, but it was definitely the initial tug of the jersey, and that first inside route to run outside was drew the penalty.
It's not when we see it; it's when the official sees it.
Mm-hmm. Officials, again, it's one of the more thankless jobs in the NFL, and I've said that all year. All right, unless you want more football coverage like XFL coverage, and please at me with your tips on fantasy football teams for DraftKings. Please do that. But we're done with football for a little bit on this show, so on to the basketball court and the locals, starting with
no puppy ball. Oh,
no puppy ball. We're not going to
texted you. If Sean ain't hosting the puppy bowl, we ghosting.
Shout out to Pickles, though, or Pickle, your puppy ball MVP.
And Taylor hosts, by the way. And Taylor hosts a big second half.
I have a special connection to Pickle, as you might notice. Anyway, unless you want that coverage, get out. But right now, it's the New York basketball Knicks. Last season at MSG, when the court came on to the beautiful confines of the MSG arena, you shut your eyes in just embarrassment. This year, it's more exciting. But this year, you shut your eyes, this time in fear, usually mostly going into the fourth quarter. 60 games into the season, Knicks have a 33-27 record and have been basically hanging around the 6th, 7th seed for a long while, pretty much half the season. And they're currently at that sexy 6th spot. No play-in at the point. They're avoiding that. But at least this year, they're looking like a team that's going to play some extra basketball. The playoffs are definitely not a rumor this year. They are a thing. They're taking from the Rangers, finally. All right, so we're going to talk Star Watch. We're going to talk new player watch as the trade deadline brought changes to both teams. And then I'll talk about something that they need to do or I'm watching for at the end of the season. Anthony, give me a Star Watch as we head into the final stretch of the regular season for the Knickerbockers.
Yeah, didn't it seem like only yesterday, but people were scratching their heads over Jalen Brunson getting a 4-year, $106 million deal. And the Knicks being with tampering charges and losing a second-round pick. And if you go back and ask Leon Ross, considering everything that's going on, if he do it again, he would say absolutely. I mean, Brunson should be an all-star. Why is he not in Utah right now is anyone's guess. But the man for the season, he's putting up 23 a game, shooting 48% from the field. In the last since January, he's averaging 30 a game on 51% shooting, 48% behind the arc, and 6 assists a game. But it's not even the fact that he's putting up numbers. It's the fact that he's doing it effortlessly. I mean, you think back to the 40-point game he put up last week against the very different Brooklyn Nets team than what we talked about a week and a half ago. He scored 40 points and only on 15 or 21 shots. I mean, it wasn't just the fact that he scored 40 or the fact that he got a hug with Iggy Azalea. It's the fact that he did it just in an efficient manner. He's made this offense just look so much easier. You see how Julius Randle is getting easier looks and is getting easier shots, being more efficient. And he's just been a perfect fit for this Knicks offense. I mean, RJ Barrett, obviously, we brought up in this segment also. You look at Quentin Grimes and all these guys who now have room to operate on the wing and on the outside and get open looks. But also Brunson can change the pace. Like he's shown that he's had his whole career, even go back to Villanova, he's had a high basketball IQ and being able to know when to play more up tempo, when to slow the game down, when to take matters into his own hands. He gets to the foul line at a very high efficient manner, and the team, for that matter, shoots more free throws as a result. You do question sometimes Thibodeau's offense because it seems like it's just mostly isolation, please screen for everyone else. But in Jalen Brunson's case, it actually does fit. He's been able to find guys open. When the Knicks get Mitchell Robinson back, that'll be more of a dynamic because He's a great pick and roll center who can finish around the basket. But also, you look at the fact that he's just been a perfect fit. I mean, that's just. I mean, we've been from a questionable signing to maybe one of the next better free agent signings in a long, long time. And Bronson has, been a big catalyst for why the Knicks is us in a prime playoff position going into the All-Star break. We saw when he has not played how that offense has struggled just top to bottom, and Randall having a tougher time getting any open looks. So he's definitely what I'm going to be looking for in the second half is, can he continue this pace? Obviously, career numbers across the board, but now can he continue that pace, knowing that teams are going to be a little more focused on him, and if he can stay healthy too, because obviously health is a big concern over a long NBA season. And if he has to miss some playing time, the Knicks offense and to a lesser extent the defense pretty much suffers as well. So Jalen Brunson, if he can maintain this reign, I like the Knicks' chances in the second half of the season.
The one thing that the Knicks haven't really stepped, probably mentioned Jalen Brunson has missed a bunch of games, hasn't missed too many games, but even in one of the games he did miss, I think it was the game where Randall got added to got officially put into the All-Star game about 2 weeks ago. They won that game. So you do realize that, I mean, yes, Brunson does a lot on the floor, but his presence has finally kind of lifted a lot of the other players in that team up, and especially Randall, because Randall is now becoming a guy who knows what his role is, and he does. And I think he was trying to do too much last year, I think, even though, yes, he was paid like he's supposed to do too much, but he's a number 2 guy. We're a number 1B guy, and he's really performed well that way this year. It's almost like 2022, 21, 22 didn't happen. And he came right back to the 2021 person that he was in the beginning. But we can talk a little bit about that in just a second. Jay, let's talk about Jalen Brunson's running buddy from Villanova from their 2016 NCAA championship team, and Josh Hart. By the way, Jay, remind me who they beat in 2016 to win that game.
Knock it off. We're going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about it.
Give me some talk about Josh Hart.
Yeah. The first thing I thought when I saw this trade go through was that Tom Thibodeau is going to love Josh Hart. And that wasn't hyperbole on my part. It was based completely on the man's own words. I mean, following Portland's win over New York back on the 25th of November, a game where Hart grabbed 19 rebounds against the Knicks, Tibbs practically gushed when asked about the Villanova product, saying, quote, "He's probably the best rebounding guard in the league. When the ball goes up, if you stand and stare, it's going to be a problem. If you turn and check, there's got to be physicality to it. He's got a great nose for the ball. He anticipates well. He's strong. We knew he would be a challenge." Hart plays hard every night and has a high basketball IQ, which shows in his shot selection as well as his rebounding. He's a relentless driver who attacks the defense when he gets an advantage. Now, he struggled shooting from 3 this season. He's only hitting a little over 30% this season, and he seems reluctant to take them. So he decreased his attempts from beyond the arc and increased his attempts inside of 10 feet. That's why his field goal percentage is still above 50% this season, as he's made 59.4% of his 2-point shots. Now, the Knicks will need Hart to get over that reluctance to shoot threes. He passed them up with alarming frequency in Portland, which has resulted in that 3-point volume dropping by 50% this season, down to only 2 per game this year, averaging well over 4 per game previously. Now, he's never been the most consistent shooter, but he was good for 34% over the last 4 years, which is good enough for NBA work. But he needs to be willing to shoot, and that's been the issue. It's possible that, due to doing all the dirty work he had to do in Portland, he didn't want to take too many possessions away from guys like Dame Lillard and Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant by hoisting too many threes. But now that he's a Knick, who have the mantra from Tibbs to jack up threes, he needs to get back to at least being a credible threat from 3 so as to make other defenders close out on him. Flip side of that is that Hart's ability to aggressively get out in transition and create early offense, which is something the Knicks are lacking. Per Synergy Sports Synergy stats, the Knicks are 28th in the NBA in terms of pace of play and in the bottom 3rd in the NBA in terms of points out of transition opportunities. So Hart's ability to be a one-man fast break will be beneficial, as a higher percentage of his offense comes out in transition than any other rotation player in the league. But more importantly, as we alluded to earlier, he's one of the best rebounders for his size in the association. 6.1 per game for his career. He was averaging 8.2 rebounds per game in Portland. Per dunksandthrees.com, among players who have seen a majority of their minutes at small forward this season, Hart ranks second in defensive rebound rate, sixth in offensive rebound rate. Now, this should improve an area of real need for the Knicks, who's, despite ranking number 2 in offensive rebound rate, thanks to the skills of Mitchell Robinson, they only rank 21st in defense rebounding rate. The Knicks have been fine, when Julius Randle and Robinson have been on the floor before Robinson got hurt, but they could use another dynamic rebounder off the bench for when those guys aren't there. Hart should be able to give them that. He should also be able to take some of the load off the Knicks perimeter players like Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly, who are consistently tasked with the toughest defensive assignments against elite wing players and high-level initiators at the point of attack. Due to Jalen Brunson's defensive limitations and R.J. Barrett's disconcerting regression on that end, having another player to take tough matchups will be immensely helpful. Playing next to Lillard and Simons, Hart took on the lion's share of the tough jobs guarding Tier 1 scoring threats like Devin Booker, Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic, and Jamal Murray. I love the lineup flexibility that Hart gives the Knicks. Tibbs can run them out there with pretty much anyone. You want to go small ball? Sure. Quickly, Brunson, Grimes, Hart, and Randle. You want to go wing heavy? Brunson, Grimes, Hart, Burnett, and Randle. You want to go all defense? Quickly, Grimes, Hart, Randle, and Robinson once he gets back. Before this trade, the Knicks didn't have enough players who could adequately defend and rebound for Tibbs to get creative with his lineups as much as he would like. Hart gives them that, and they'll need it come playoff time, but he's only going to be able to do that if he can show that he's willing to take those open shots from 3 that are going to come his way.
Josh Hart is the prototypical Tibbs player, and I think Tibbs needed that because one of my main concerns that I'm not going to mention here was the fact that this team just is a very good and talented team. It didn't seem like a team that matched its coach, which is a little different from the Knicks team that we saw from 2 years ago. That team definitely matched the guy who was coaching it. And it does seem, and me and Anthony have talked about it a lot, Tibbs sometimes just doesn't seem like in this type of NBA where it's score, 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 and no lead is safe, no matter what type of defense that you have. It's hard to adjust when you coach one type of way in your entire career. It's kind of like when Greg Popovich had to learn that the 3-point line exists, so that he's like, "Oh, I can use this for all of my needs." So
that's there.
That's something that needs to be done. One other thing that I would have been concerned about with the Knicks is until the last few weeks, their fourth quarter number was ridiculous. There was only a point when they were winning, I think, 2 out of 20 fourth quarters, and every game had seemed like an adventure. It's gotten a lot better over the last month, but my main concern is one thing that Jay just said. RJ Barrett is a much different player than he was last year. Now, I'll take this into account just to start off. In his last 2 games, he hasn't hit a 3-pointer. Those 2 games were blowouts against the Nets and the Hawks. Weren't even really games for most of them. So he shot 40.1% from the field this year. That's not what you should be shooting in the NBA. It should be more in like the 43-44% range. And in the last 10 games, I'm sorry, that's for the last 10 games, 40.1% from the field and 26% from 3 in the last 10 games. And again, no 3-pointers, 0 for 9 in the last 2. In fact, you just saw in the Hawks game on Wednesday, he went into the lane and luckily he drew a foul against Onea Okongwu of the Hawks, but Barrett does seem a little gun shy. His numbers are the same, by the way: 19.7, 5.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists. That's essentially his career line. But Barrett is the only permanent starter on this team with a negative net rating. The numbers in 1,263 minutes that Randle, Brunson, and Barrett have shared the floor this season, Knicks have been outscored by 3.5 points per 100 possessions. That number is usually 2 points plus per 100 possessions. So Barrett is not being used to being a number 3 option. Last year, he was a number 1 or 2 option, and he really couldn't do too much wrong in this city last year. That's why he got the extension. That's why he got a lot of praise and led to a lot of good things. But I don't think it led to Barrett being like, what would happen if Jalen Brunson was better than expected and I'm going to get less shots, which he's got. And now you have Josh Hart on the team, who again signifies everything that Tom Thibodeau wants in a player and is a much better defensive player than Barrett. the time might go even more down for RJ Barrett. And a lot of people have to remember RJ Barrett is a person who is a building block for the future, but Knicks fans might remember he's probably more likely the guy that held up a Donovan Mitchell trade to New York this offseason. And I think if you polled a lot of Knicks fans, considering the All-Star season that Donovan Mitchell has had now, getting a third big scorer in New York might have changed this team's ceiling from being a 6 seed to a 3 or 4 seed and building for a championship resume. But if RJ can get back to where he was before, this might be a good second half for the Knicks and something that could get a playoff series win for the first time in what seems like forever.
Yeah,
Very interesting to say.
Yeah, I would add this. You mentioned Julius Randle maybe doing too much. And remember, Randle signed his big contract last year. I wonder if some of that is what RJ Barrett is now, and probably thinking and trying to do too much to live up to a big contract. And obviously, the outside noise of the Donovan Mitchell trade that he would have been part of, is some of that is playing into his psyche a little bit when you see him on the court. I mean, because shots that he normally would knock down and pass, especially outside beyond the 3-point arc, he's missing. He's sometimes a rag. We always know he's been a streaky shooter, but this year in particular, he's really struggled from behind the arc when he's had the looks. So I'm not speculating on a whole lot, but when you have that added pressure, I mean, it is something to think about just a little bit. Like maybe he does need to just go back to simplifying things a little bit and get back to what he was when he does best, and that is really playing off the other guys in the lineup. And we saw late last year he was really the go-to guy, but Randle going down with the injury. So maybe he just take it down a notch or two and just let the game come to him a little more. In the second half, maybe things get easier, and maybe he may not overthink things a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to need him to have some semblance of a return to form if they're going to not only hold on to that 6 seed and avoid the play-in scenario, but, have any chance of getting out of a first-round series. They're going to need him. He doesn't have to dominate. I mean, we know this. I mean, he just has to kind of like be there and take advantage of the opportunities that arise coming out of defenses focusing on Brunson, focusing on Randall, and just take advantage of those opportunities because they're going to be there.
Well, James, like I said before, the number is the fact that he needs to be a positive on the court in terms of plus minus. It's just very weird that number compared to that lineup and what he has represented right now. It's been a bad season, I think, in vision for RJ Barrett, not numbers wise, but in vision, he has just gone down a little bit in a lot of people's book. All right. For the Brooklyn Nets, we know what's gone. We talked about it last week. The answer, stars, title aspirations, headaches, and according to Anthony, their entire fan base. Apparently, they're playing in front of an empty Barclays Center now, and nobody was chanting anything. And
so Anthony, you've actually been able to get a good night's sleep when the Nets are home now?
No, they still have concerts at the Barclays Center. That's in the drama. And look,
please.
I went to Monday night. Hey, come on! I went to Monday Night Raw last Monday, and Net fans wish they could get a crowd that enthusiastic on a nightly basis.
Wow.
Resting at 34 and 26 and sitting at 5th in the Eastern Conference and apparently at 30th in attendance, there is a chance to really hit some big time building for the future in their final 24 games of the season and get a good playoff spot too. Same questions. Anthony, talk about your Star Watch.
Well, Spencer Dinwiddie is the guy I'm looking at going into the second half of the year. And you just think about this. He was a part of the net team pre-KD and Kyrie that actually made the playoffs. He had a number of career highlights the Nets, some buzzer beaters, some big performances, helped the team get to the 6th seed in that 2019 season before losing to your 76ers in round 1 of the playoffs. But you think about the year, the next year, the first year, KD and Kyrie, obviously KD not playing, and Kyrie only playing 23 games. But then we got also a great start. He had 20. He was averaging a career high 20 points a game before he went down when injuries had limited him for 20 games. But you think about this too is for the season, he averages close to 18 a game, shooting 45%. But what I'm looking at with him is his leadership role, and obviously Cam Thomas talked about Spencer coming in and being more of an influence to him and making things a little easier when he's on the court. Because Cam Thomas is a walking bucket. We've seen it with his consecutive 40-point game stretch. Yep. But a guy like Dinwiddie, who knows how to run the offense, who knows how to space things out, get guys opportunities to make plays, make things a lot easier for him. Yep. But when you have a roster turnover to this magnitude, you gotta have a guy who can keep things level-headed and has been there, has done that, and Dinwiddie, obviously knowing not just what it takes to play in the New York market, but knowing what's it take to win in the New York market is going to be very key in the second half of the year. I mean, Jacques Vaughn, when you look at this team, Jacques Vaughn basically has a team he really wants to coach. You know, he doesn't have the star divas and the high maintenance personalities to have to deal with. Now he has a much deeper roster that he can mention mass lineups. Now he's going to figure out a rotation, which is going to be his key in the second half of the year. But then when he really in Dallas, he was playing the role that Jalen Brunson was playing last year, much of the last season, being the secondary scorer and the guy that come off the bench and be the spark plug. Whereas now he's going to be looking more as the guy who can keep the locker room together and kind of help mesh a lot of new personalities together. If Brooklyn wants to avoid the play-in and maintain a great playoff position, look, they got to a great first half. They have some cushion to play with and a lot of leeway. But Dinwiddie, when he's on the court, when he's off the court in the locker room, even on the sideline, he's going to be an extension of what Jacques Vaughn wants to get out there to the rest of the guys. So Dinwiddie, not as much as his stats and numbers, but as much as the non-tangibles, the stuff you're not going to see on a stat sheet. It's going to be the most important game for the Brooklyn Nets in the second half of the season as they try to fight off a Miami Heat team, a Knicks team, and Lord knows what other teams coming out of that play-in scenario in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it's not as wide open as the West, but the East, you still got some wild cards that obviously we're going to talk about in the next segment that you're going to have to keep your eyes on if you're the Brooklyn Nets, because it's not about who you're chasing as much as who you're trying to keep off your back bumper as far as the playoffs is concerned.
Yeah, you know, the thing about Dinwiddie is that he's kind of come full circle, if you will. You know, he's back with the Nets, and the team he's playing on is eerily reminiscent in terms of makeup.
You got Jared Allen, Russell,
Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and those guys. It's eerily similar, you know, to that. And he was in some way he was the engine that made that team run, you know, and he's going to have, you know, he basically steps back into that role coming back to Brooklyn. I will say this, as far as Cam Thomas goes, he now actually has a better mentor than Kyrie Irving. So that in itself right there makes Dinwiddie coming back a positive. So anytime you have Kyrie Irving as a mentor, it's kind of like that. Your choices in life.
It's like the Family Matters episode when the troubled cousin comes around and now suddenly Andy and Uncle is getting arrested for a stolen vehicle because of the troubled cousin being around and being a bad influence. Yep.
So Dinwiddie gives them an adult in the room.
I didn't one Kyrie dig, okay? Just one.
Well, Cam Thomas did go to LSU, and Ben Simmons also went to LSU. So you know that's a person who can be your influence. I mean, said anything's better than
Ben Simmons
Kyrie,
is actually
right?
still playing basketball. What? Wait, what?
Really? Not really. 34 and 24, by the way, for the Nets. I misspoke beforehand. Jay.
Yeah.
I know they've had a bad season, but this is how I wrote it. I'm sorry. Jay, time to talk about another person from that 2016 Villanova
yes,
team.
It is.
Mikal Bridges technically did redshirt that particular season when he was on the roster. So talk about Mikal Bridges now on the Nets.
You know, I got to tell you, you know, as much as, you know, people have at times maligned what Jay Wright built at Villanova, when you see the products of his system, you know, littering the NBA landscape and playing at a high level, you got to give the man his due.
And if you've seen Villanova this year, by the way, you really want to give the man his due. By the way,
exactly.
Terrible.
It's funny, Rabbi. I remember our 2018 NBA draft show for two very distinct reasons. First, due to scheduling snafu at M&N, Anthony and I, along with Steve Ferguson, were stuck doing our live NBA draft coverage from a studio so small it felt like we were stuck in a closet. And second, I went from the thrill of victory when the Sixers drafted Mikal Bridges out of Villanova at number 10 overall to the agony of defeat when they inexplicably traded him to the Suns that night for Zaire Smith, who lasted the sum total of 13 games in the NBA across the 2018-19 and 2019-2020 seasons, while Bridges went on to become the personification of an NBA 3-and-D wing. Bridges became a starter in 2020-21, and over the last two seasons in Phoenix, he put up a shooting slash line of 53.8% from the floor, 39.7% from three, 83.7% from the stripe, while averaging a little under 34 minutes a game, 13.8 points, 4.3 boards, 2.2 assists, and 1.7 stocks. That's a combined blocks and steals, while making first-team All-NBA defense last year and finishing second to Marcus Smart for Defensive Player of the Year. This year, he became a larger part of the Suns' offense, upping his scoring to 17.2 per game, picking up some of that slack caused by the various injuries to Devin Booker that has caused him to miss a total of 27 games so far this season, including the entire month of January. Ironically, Bridges' final game in a Suns uniform came against the Nets, where he put up 21 points and 8 boards. His role from the jump on this Nets team will be decidedly different than the one he had in Phoenix. I fully expect him to be one of the primary offensive players on this team alongside Spencer Dinwiddie. For proof of concept, I offer you his final 13 games with Phoenix, where he showed that with alpha-type minutes, he was averaging 37.1 minutes per game in that stretch. He can provide alpha-type offense, averaging 23.1 points per game, shooting it at 48.4% from the floor, 37.7 from three, 91.8 from the line, while still providing his usual all-defensive team effort on the other side of the ball. Now, it's obviously a very small sample size, but he put up 23 in the three-point loss to Philly in his Nets debut and 45 in the 11-point win over Miami right before the break. Granted, he has a 7-point clunker in the middle in that 18-point loss to the Knicks, but the early returns are encouraging. It will help that due to the lack of other scoring options on this roster, Bridges will get the type of shot attempts that a primary option normally gets, and he won't be deferring to anyone like he did in Phoenix when Booker was healthy, to see if he can sustain this level of production over the remainder of the season, especially since he's likely to be the focus of every opponent's defensive game plan, something he rarely had to worry about in Phoenix, even when Booker was missing all those games, as the Suns still had DeAndre Ayton and CP3 for teams to worry about. Now, Bridges has made himself into one of the true two-way players in the NBA, but now he has to remake himself into the Nets' best player, period, for Brooklyn to keep its playoff hopes alive when the second half, if you will, begins next Friday in Chicago. 10 of the Nets' final 24 opponents are either hovering around or are under 500. So making the postseason is still very possible, but keeping their current number 5 seed, as Anthony alluded to earlier, is going to take some doing, and much of it will depend on the production of Bridges in this, down the stretch.
And they have a little bit of a cushion, as Anthony said. I think it's a 2.5 game cushion over the Heat to stay out of that 7 through 10 spot. I look at that box score, and that kind of lets me to a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Number one, who is the star of this team? Is it Miles Bridges? He shot the ball 24 times in that win over the Miami Heat. Cam Johnson shot the ball 14 times, Thomas 11, Joe Harris 7. Nobody else with more than 4 shots in the entire
any given night kind of thing, Rabbi.
It's a weird any given night because you don't necessarily know who the hot hand is. In fact, the people who are still on this team after blowing up Gate 2013, is Nick Claxton, who was a plus 15 and is probably a very good guy at the 5. Royce O'Neal, who's been actually averaging better on the floor and is usually in that positive. And then it's the combo of Joe Harris, Ben Simmons, and Seth Curry. Curry only got 10 minutes on the floor, and he's had a lot of injuries this year. Joe Harris is kind of maybe a relic of the Nets past that the Nets don't really want to see too much anymore. They gave him a ridiculous contract. I think 4 years, $75 million.
He can still knock down threes when he's healthy.
He can, but he hasn't been healthy, and I don't know if the Nets want to take too much more chances on him because Josiah is going to be cutting money left and right.
Yeah,
and then, of course, there's Ben Simmons, who you can't give him away for a bag of magic beans at this point. So I'm not 100% sure of what his future is going to be. Hell, in the entire NBA, as it is just with the organization of the Brooklyn Nets. The only other thing that kind of concerns me is this is a good team. This is a team with a lot of talent, but this team is going to eventually need to go out and get a star again. You need to get a star to win. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Kyrie Irving type star, but it has to be a tier 1 type star. And this team, more than not, in its franchise history, if you go back to the trade of Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce as the new big 3 in Brooklyn, which got to the same exact spot, the second round, only losing in 5 games, this time not 7. The Nets had been more of a superstar team than they've actually been a homegrown team. And you don't get 3 opportunities as a franchise to become the same team again. So when they decide to flip that script and flip that switch and go for the big name, what's going to happen? You can't build on the fly anymore in this league. And if you can't get the star, which I don't know if the Nets are going to be able to get the star again, I don't know what the direction of this franchise is. I'm just saying, they're a fun team, but they're a team with the ceiling of a second floor apartment.
Yeah,
Rabbi,
I would say that.
Hang on, Rabbi, here is the thing. The Knicks, the Nets are cursed when it comes to their experiences with alphas and tier 1 stars, if you will. It goes back to the way they shafted Julius Erving after they came into the NBA, and they have been cursed ever since because of that.
Anthony, bring your references to the 2000s, please.
Yeah, well, I would say that the Brooklyn Nets, they need to look back to the New Jersey Nets history and remember when they made the trade for Jason Kidd. I mean, he was the star, but he embraced playing in the New York metropolitan area, and they gave him the pieces around Jason Kidd, and it kind of meshed well. That's why the Nets, when year 1 was suddenly went from a team that won 30 games of Byron Scott's coach to flipping the script and winning 52 games the next year and getting to the NBA Finals. Brooklyn, they get a star. They gotta get somebody who is gonna embrace Brooklyn, is gonna embrace playing in the New York market. I just feel like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were 2 guys who just never really embraced that idea. Like Kevin Durant is a guy that's just really too sensitive to playing this market where every move you make is going to be heavily scrutinized. I think Kyrie Irving just wanted to go somewhere where he would be kind of called the shots more and have I think where the Nets messed up was being too lenient toward the star players and giving them too much power. I think moving forward, what the Nets are going to have to learn is they got to get a star player that is going to embrace the Nets organization, embrace with the culture and what they want to do, but more importantly, embrace wanting to be in the New York market, knowing the spotlight is going to be on them every 5 minutes, and knowing that the expectation is going to be a lot greater than playing in, say, a small market like a Phoenix, like a Utah, even in Cleveland. I'm just naming a few off the top of my head.
I want to add something to that also, though. You're also going to have to do that, embracing the New York market and trying to push a team over the line in the New York market, because as we all, I think it's pretty obvious this is still always going to be a Knicks town. And I think Kyrie and KD embraced the New York market, but they embraced the New York market like it was the New York market, and there wasn't a team that they had to get over the line in the New York market. I think Kyrie and KD almost made it like an NBA All-Star team, rather it being the Brooklyn Nets, and that's the problem. But hey, we'll talk about KD in just a second. I have a line for that, but let's go over to around the NBA. All right, gents. Time to enter club around the NBA. Let's go through the velvet ropes. Do they even make those anymore? Is that still a thing? I don't think so. And see the first level, which is the Eastern Conference. The top four, Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Philadelphia, are in VIP status as the top tier, but then along in that mid tier are the Knicks and Nets. And then in the corner, along with the Knicks and Nets, are the Heat and Hawks. And they're waiting to get to the VIP section, reminiscing to each other like your ex-girlfriend about how they were such the hot thing back in the day with their conference final losses. But at least you're not having a Shotzi Blackheart like tank coming into the club and tanking it like the Pistons and the Hornets are. I knew you would like that Shotzi reference. That's me. If you're not like those, you're just in the lower tier that just wants to dance. So let's just talk about each tier. Jay, you're gonna go first.
Yeah. In this conference, I'm going.
Yeah, you're gonna go first in this segment. Talking about the Sixers at the top tier.
Yeah. Is there a top tier team in the East that has been more inconsistent and harder to get a read on than the Philadelphia 76ers? You guys know I follow them as a fan, and whether it's in that role or my role here on the show, I scratched my head the next. Granted, dealt with injuries to their stars. Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Tyrese Maxey have all missed at least 10 plus games so far, and they're still trying to figure out their rotation. But a team with all this talent should be more consistent with their play, especially on the defensive end and from their bench. Yes, they're in a good stretch heading into the break at 38-19, good for third best record in the East and fourth best in the association. But despite some great individual performances by their big three and an offense that's trending in the right direction, there are some concerns that need to get sorted. It has consistently taken them too long to lock in on defense, which is part of the reason why that defense is the 17th best in the NBA since January 1st. Whether it's in transition on the boards due to mental lapses, communication issues, the Sixers' problems on defense have made them easy to score on, leading to them blowing some rather large leads at various times, including 21 points twice in the first week of February. Perhaps they can turn it on after the All-Star break and into the postseason, but it would be a stretch to say that they've shown a ton of good habits on the defensive end so far. They rank fourth in the NBA in zone defense usage at 7.9% of their possessions per Synergy Sports, but that usage is indicative of a larger problem, as they're not using it as a changeup, but as a last resort, because their man-to-man D has been shredded far too often this season, despite adding high pedigree defenders in PJ Tucker and DeAnthony Melton. Now, Embiid has had a pair of 3-game stretches and a 4-game stretch where he was unable to go, but upon returning to the lineup after that last 3-game stretch, he's been dealing with nagging foot soreness all season. Played 16 of the last 17 heading into the break, did so at an MVP level, 32.2 points per game, 10.7 boards, 3.4 assists, 1.2 steals, 1.2 blocks, a little under 35 minutes a game, slash line, 54.2 from the floor, 38% from three, a little under 86% from the line on 11.5 trips per game. Sixers went 12-4 in those 16, 13-4 overall. And they head into the break on a 4-game winning streak after consecutive losses to a shorthanded Celtics team and the Knicks. He also reached a milestone in the win over Cleveland, surpassing Allen Iverson as the fastest Sixer player to reach 10,000 points in his career. 373 games took Embiid. Iverson took him 378. Harden missed 14 straight games from November 4 through December 2. Only missed 2 since. Been playing at an all-star level since he's back, and it's a crime that he's not won this season. Like Embiid, played 16 of the final 17, averaged 20.6 points, 6.1 boards, 10.8 assists, 49.1 from the floor, 41.5 from three, on almost 7 attempts, same 85.9% as Embiid from the stripe. Now, granted, Harden's not able to be the 2017 version of himself every night anymore, but he's still able to do it in key spots when the team has needed it, and they will need it going forward. Leads the NBA in assists this season, and his overall 39% on threes and 51% on twos is a significant improvement from last season. Tyrese Maxey, his adjustment to exclusively coming off the bench as the sixth man leader of the bench unit, but closing out with the starters, happened 3 weeks after returning from an 18-game stretch on the injured list. It's had its ups and downs, though he has seemed to find a groove of late. Last 11 games heading in the break, 16.5 points, 29.3 minutes coming off the bench strictly. Shooting slash line, 45.3 from the floor, a little under 42% from three on 5 attempts per game, and 81.4 from the stripe. He's also had 4 games of 25 plus points in this stretch. Tobias Harris. Now, he accepted his new role, which essentially started last year, as Maxey emerged as a dynamic offensive threat. And overall, he's been solid. 15.4 points per game, 6.1 boards in 33.6 minutes, 49.6 from the floor, 37.3 from three, 86.6 from the strip. But he has struggled from beyond the arc since Christmas, hitting threes at only a 30.2 clip. It's put a bit of a crimp in the Sixers offense, but those are shots he's going to have to keep taking for the Sixers to be a title contending level team. And now, as far as adding help at the trade deadline, Daryl Morey made ripples as opposed to waves. They sent out Matisse Thybulle. They brought back Jalen McDaniels. We all know Thybulle's ability on defense is game-changing, but his offensive skill never really evolved beyond being a low-volume, low-accuracy three-point shooter with limited ball skills. Made him a liability in the postseason. McDaniels can put the ball on the floor a little bit and isn't shy about putting up threes. Over 40% of his field goal attempts are from beyond the arc. He's only hitting at 32.2 per clip, though. He's a surprisingly good playmaker, and he should focus a little bit more on that aspect of his game. His role at the Sixers is going to be to shrink the floor on defense by helping to cover for Harden and Maxey. And he'll contribute offensively by cutting to the rim and finishing there off the playmaking of Embiid and Harden, as well as knocking down corner threes, though hopefully at a better rate than his current 33.3. If he can do those things, he'll be a nice rotation piece for Doc Rivers to deploy. Sixers also took another stab at finding production at the usual hole in their rotation, backup center. They signed 10-year veteran Dwayne Dedmon, late of Miami, to join Montrezl Harrell and Paul Reed in covering the minutes Embiid sits per game. Dedmon got into 30 games of the Heat, 11.7 minutes, 5.7 points, 3.6 boards on 49.6 from the floor. However, given that his offensive contributions were spotty at best, as was his effectiveness in guarding the pick and roll, he wasn't able to establish himself as the Heat's primary backup big man. So if you're skeptical that he'll be better than what the Sixers currently already have, that's a reasonable feeling. The Sixers have 25 games remaining after the break, which is tied for the most in the NBA, and only 10 of those come against teams that are at or under 500. And Rivers has repeatedly mentioned the difficulty of the upcoming 17-game road-heavy March schedule. Sixers are going to need to run that gauntlet and come out of it mostly unscathed if they're to keep their number 3 seed. They have the talent to do it, but they have to find the night in and night out consistency required of a team that has designs on the franchise's first Larry O'Brien trophy since the glory days of Dr. J and Moses Malone 40 years ago.
28-7 in their last 35, which is insane considering. And by the way, I never thought the Harden and Embiid combo would work as well as it has so far. I mean, I would like to see it more healthy in at playoff time.
That's been one thing. Is the lack is them being healthy and being able to be on the floor together to create that rhythm.
Also,
I talked about it last year when Harden came over, that the ability of those two guys to be devastating on the pick and roll, that potential was there, but only now are you starting to see that actually happen.
Also, I'm a little worried about spacing on the floor, which Harden needs, and I don't know if Embiid can always provide that. But also, again, an MVP-like pace for James Harden. It's almost, and lucky for him, his health has been very good over the last few years. And I'm hoping to God, for the sake of the NBA, because everybody loves Embiid. I don't know how you can't love Embiid. He's one of the most lovable figures in the NBA. He is an amazing player. I love him so much. All right. Enough of my fun and get to the let me talk actually now. I want to talk about the Miami Heat, who made the finals last year, and made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and it was just one little shot away from getting themselves to an NBA Finals. And this year, they're basically competing in that second tier for in the bottom of the playoff trend and the middle of the play-in trend. And it's weird because it's essentially the same team that got to that same point last year. But the one thing that you notice about the Miami Heat is consistency is not the thing. 2020, they get to the NBA Finals. 2021, they're a 6 seed that they don't win a single game in the playoffs against a Bucks team that they won in 5 games against the season before. The team is decently good. I mean, Bam Adebayo is having his best season as a pro, but Jimmy Butler has just been in and out of the lineup. Tyler Hero, still about as good as he's been. He is now becoming a consistent 20-point-per-game scorer in the league. But again, the team has no depth. The team has no depth, and one of the signings that they had last year, actually, a trade for Kyle Lowry, has been disastrous, to say the least. Lowry has looked every bit of his age, something that a guy who's older than Kyle Lowry should never say, but he is, and he is probably could easily be a buyout candidate at this time of the trade deadline. At this time, because he's just not a fit on the Miami Heat and never has been. And it's just hasn't really worked out. And I think that's hurt because this team was never really there. Butler's a superstar, but Butler is getting older. And Bam Adebayo is still developing into what he is. That's why this team has been inconsistent this year. This team has played pretty much over half of its games in clutch time situations every single game. And that's going to come back to bite you in the end. This team doesn't dominate anybody. This team isn't always is always a fun team to watch, but they're just a middle of the road team this year that just cannot put 2 to 3 good games together. And for a team that has a much higher average age than other sides, that's a problem. And that's why the Miami Heat are just currently right now in the 7th spot, behind the Knicks by half a game or half a game, I believe, for that 6th spot. And I just don't see an ending to this for the Miami Heat. This might be where they're destined to be this year, but never go against Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra team playoffs. That's something that we shouldn't do. But if you're going to, this might be the season. Just never count them out for dead, because it'll always do something to get back from the deadness.
Nope.
All right, let's move on. Anthony, lower tier of the club. Who are you picking?
I'm looking at the team up north, the only team up north actually.
We the North.
Raptors. Well, they've been in their butt the North this season. You think about it, they went from a team that won 48 games last year, and one of the more surprising teams, to now bordering on one of the more disappointing teams. 28-31, they're sitting 10th in the Eastern Conference. The defense, which is unusual for a Nick Nurse Nick Nurse coach team, is middle of the pack in the NBA. They've had some injuries along with inconsistency with some of the key players, and it's kind of played a part into it. Many were speculating that they were going to kind of blow up the team and start over, with the exception of Pascal Siakam, who was the lone All-Star this year, who has been playing very well. But they decided to stay pat. They actually added Jakob Poeltl.
Jakob Poeltl, yeah. Jakob
Poeltl.
Big
and during the trade deadline, the hopes that maybe that'll help out the Raptors as far as getting maybe just in the playing tournament. But you look at Scotty Barnes going through the usual sophomore slump. He's being a rookie of the year. He's definitely has inconsistencies this season. Siakam been a lone bright spot, playing 25 points a game, the lone All-Star, and he missed 10 games that cost the Toronto Raptors a right abductor string. But the surprise has been Fred VanVleet, and that's the guy that really had got to a really bad start. Was shooting under 30% from threes for much of the first half of the year. And when you look at the fact that he's being paid close to $130 million over 4 years, that is something that that they need more out of him going into the second half of the season. Toronto has the 5th toughest schedule remaining. They only have 23 games left. Let me just double check. They have 23 games left, 5th toughest schedule left in the NBA. So they got their work cut out for them just to make the playing tournament. And Fred VanVleet, remember how clutch he was in the 2019 finals against Golden State. Big shot, and was a catalyst with Toronto playing so well, going into that Orlando bubble in 2020, and then and obviously last year, a big part of the Raptors' resurgence after a year playing in Florida. He's really come down. Like like previously last few weeks, he's been playing a lot better, playing 25 points a game. Rediscovering his 3-point shot that was so key. But also, you look at it like this, his downward tick may have had an effect on some of the other guys, Scotty Barnes in particular. With VanVleet, you wonder, can he take kind of that third option where he was, more the second option last year and in previous years behind Siakam? Can he take a step back as far as still being productive and allowing Scotty Barnes to continue to develop into a marquee player? So the Raptors right now, because they did not start over and they're kind of an iffy team is in win now mode. You just wonder if they have the pieces or they're going to have the consistency to win now beyond playing. Because right now, they haven't been a great team all year. You look at them in Chicago. It's been two teams that maybe should have
They've been
started
fighting
over
for the 10 and the 11, and they fought it for the 10 and the 11 a lot. So
yeah, and right now Toronto just kind of they're a borderline team right now.
I said this to Jay, and I'll just say this again when everybody says blow it up, blow it up, blow it up. 20 teams make the second season of the NBA. Technically, yes, the postseason, but 4 teams make the play-in. It is physically impossible numbers-wise to say that all of these teams blow it up without competition. This is what Adam Silver did by bringing in the play-in game. So I respect Toronto not selling a guy like OG Anunoby for nickels on the dollar.
Why should you? There's no reason to.
Exactly. You wait till the off season to try to do it better. By the way, Jakob Poeltl went for 30 in his last game before the All-Star break. That's a very good pickup, and that's only one off his career high. So, all right, guys, let's go downstairs to floor 2. Actually, technically the basement floor. It's the West, and goddamn, is it wacky. Recently, VIP status has only been occupied by the Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies, and Sacramento Kings. The bouncer is Nikola Jokic, so that's why no one else actually gets it. He does everything at this club. It's a last-second decision by the manager, which means the club has not allowed the Suns to enter the VIP room at the top. Just remember that. The manager said no. Truly almost everyone can be in one of the other tiers. There are 3.5 games between the Los Angeles Clippers at 4 and the Utah Jazz at 11. Yes, that's the difference between home court advantage in round 1 and no chance at postseason play at all. And then there's tankers like San Antonio and Houston, which you know what that means. The tanking's bright and the stars don't fight. Deep in the heart of Texas. Hey, let's talk about the Tier 1 Kings.
Yeah, you know what? No one saw the Sacramento Kings being.
Sorry, Anthony, let's talk about the Tier 1 Kings. I'm sorry, I didn't put that on there. My fault.
Yeah, it was an executive decision, but I mean, no one saw Sacramento being this good and this fast. When you think about the Kings fighting really the longest playoff drought in sports right now, one of the longest in sports, definitely the longest in the NBA. 2007 was the last playoff.
2005. 2005.
Oh, even longer.
Yes.
Okay, the longest playoff appearance since for the Kings. That's a long time. We were both still in college, I think, Rabbi. At that time,
we were.
And the Seattle Supersonics still exists. So we're going too far back. But you know,
by the way, that was the team I believe that beat the Sacramento Kings in the playoffs.
Wait. Are we going all the way back to the heyday of Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and those guys? Is that how far back we have to go?
I think Webber was still on the team. I'm going to take a look at that roster in just a moment. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a long time. But you think about GM Monte McNair, what he's done with this team, and I mean Mike Brown, number 1. Has been a great turned out to be a great hire. Mike Brown obviously with finals experience from his days with Cleveland, being on the Golden State Warriors coaching staff, and even coaching a few games in Steve Kerr's absence with the Lakers as well. Really the last good season they had towards the end of Kobe Bryant's career, 2012. But they're led by the 2 All-Stars, the Domantas Sabonis, the pretty much quintessential double-double guy if there ever was one. And I don't think there's ever been a trade where both teams have actually benefited from it. We look at Indiana and what they got out of Halliburton, who was an all-star in his own right in that trade. But Sabonis averaging 18 and 8 and 12 rebounds a game. And De'Aaron Fox, who I always say is the guy the Lakers stupidly passed up for Lonzo Ball in that 2018 draft. Averaging 24 a game and a won himself All-Star for the first time in his career. But they look at some of the other key moves that McNair was able to do. He had added Kevin Huerter, drafting Davion Mitchell. Remember, we talked about him on this show a couple of years ago as far as the NCAA tournament. Keegan Murray, and it just all came together really fast. And Mike Brown is leading the highest scoring team in the NBA. The defense has been kind of up and down at best, but you never equated Mike Brown and offensive juggernaut in the same sentence, but that's the team he inherited. And when you look at this team, they're a fun team to watch. They were young. They have a lot of building blocks. They remind me of the Memphis Grizzlies team from last year that had the young pieces and just saw things come together very quickly. As far as the second half of the season, they got themselves in a prime position where they can at least get home court advantage in round one of the playoffs. They have the fourth toughest schedule remaining in the NBA, and they have 3 or 5 games respectively. But the way they're positioned, the fact that on a given night they can outscore literally anyone, and we saw in Dallas when they play defense, defense, they can really shut teams down. It took Luka really much out of that game in the fourth quarter, in that win. So Sacramento is one of those sleeper teams. Well, they're not sleeper anymore. They're third in the West going into the All-Star break. They're one of those teams that you gotta have to keep your eye out on because you wouldn't expect them to be this good, this fast, but they can win a playoff series, maybe give a good team like a Denver a bit of a scare in round 2 if that matchup ever exists, or whoever comes in, or even Memphis, because the Grizzlies have had their inconsistencies the last few weeks, and this is why you don't cross Uncle Shay Sharp, okay? Just to put that out there for the Grizzlies. But I'm just saying, but Sacramento, they're a fun team. I'm looking forward to hopefully to get more nationally televised games, and the rest of the country can see what the Northern California be able to watch this year, because the way this organization has come together, and the fact that you almost root for them the same way you rooted for the Buffalo Bills to finally end that playoff drought that was so long, and the fans, that fan base absolutely deserve it. We get back to the King scenes in the 2000s. It's just like I said, I'm just looking forward. Hopefully, like I say, hey, look, Adam Silver, do your job. Get these guys more on ESPN. Get them on TNT if you can down the stretch, and let the rest of the nation see some of these really good teams out west, particularly Sacramento being a young up-and-coming and a very good, hungry team that, you see casual fans get behind every year.
You know what? They are the redheaded stepchild of all of the teams in California for the NBA.
As well they should be, by the way.
Granted, they've earned that title in more seasons than they haven't. But I'll tell you this, if Mike Brown doesn't get a crap ton of Coach of the Year votes for what he's done out there, then there's something wrong with the voting process for that award.
Probably gonna get it. I'm trying to think of other people who would, but I think he'd be. By the way, Weber was on that team, traded to the Sixers in that mid-season. So you're talking about a Mike Bibby, but you're still talking about a Mike Bibby, Peja Stojakovic, about the same type of lineup that it was. And they did lose to the Sonics, by the way, in the first round of the NBA playoffs in 2004, 2005. My memory, shockingly, is still good from college. All right, Jay. You made the decision to knock the Suns down to the second level. They are currently 5th in the Western Conference, but obviously with KD possibly coming into that lineup next week, the future is bright.
Yeah, when I texted you guys to tell you that based on the standings that Anthony and I were flipping tiers for this segment, Anthony replied that the Phoenix Suns are still top tier due to the addition of Kevin Durant and the expectations. And from that perspective, he's right. But purely based on the standings, the Suns are a mid-tier team at the moment at 32-28, 1 game ahead of the number 6 seeded Mavericks, half a game behind the number 4 seeded Clippers, and still without the services of Mr. Durant, who's rehabbing an MCL injury, though he is expected to lace him up after the break. But exactly when is still TBD. The thing with the Suns pretty much comes down to those two things that Anthony noted, Kevin Durant and expectations. The Suns will have about 20 games before the playoffs arrive to figure out minutes, the rotation, and how to incorporate one of the greatest scorers in basketball history, who's a walking bucket that no one in the NBA can really stop. And when healthy, is arguably the best player in any playoff series the Suns will be in, no matter the round. At the time of his injury, The Nets were 27-13, having gone 18-2 in the previous 20, with Durant averaging 31 points, 7 boards, 5 dimes on a ridiculous shooting slash line of 59.4 from the floor, 43% from beyond the arc, 96.5 from the line. He also, along with Nick Claxton, had carried the Nets to a top 10 NBA defense. No one on the planet was playing better than Durant. Overall, the 13-time All-Star is averaging 29.7 points, 6.7 boards, 5.3 assists, and shooting overall for the season 55.9 from the floor, 37.6 from three, and an NBA best 93.4 from the stripe. He was a legit MVP candidate. This is what the Suns are banking on getting when Durant is cleared to play. For the most part, Durant makes his teammates better simply because he's on the floor and draws attention away from them. In their 3 seasons in Brooklyn, per play-by-play stats, Kyrie Irving had a 58.3 effective field goal percentage with Durant. When Durant was off, that dropped to 55.3. Claxton, 74.7 effective field goal percentage with Durant, 64.4 without him. Joe Harris shot better. Patty Mills shot better. It's not an accident. Look at Durant's 3 years in Golden State, which may be a better comparison to the Suns, as the Warriors' star-studded roster from that time is similar to what KD's going to be walking into in Phoenix when he can actually walk again. Steph Curry, 61.2 effective field goal percentage with Durant, 57.3 without him. Klay Thompson, 57.6 with him, 55.3 without him. Draymond Green, 52.4 with him, 46.7 without him. Having Durant's going to make things easier for Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton. He's going to open up more of the floor for CP3's drives, more of Ayton's rolls to the basket off the pick and roll, and everywhere for Booker. The combination of Durant and Booker, who was also playing MVP candidate level basketball prior to his injury and is only just now getting back into form and looking like his 26.6 points per game self, this has the potential to be on par with KD's pairing with Steph. Booker has done a brilliant job deferring to Paul during his time in Phoenix, so having to do a similar thing with Durant shouldn't be too much of an adjustment. He's become a complete basketball player, like I said, deferring when he needs to, taking over when required, playing really good defense, and fitting in however his team needs. As unselfish a superstar as there is in the NBA, guys. To be fair, Phoenix still has some questions even once Durant returns. They badly need a lockdown perimeter defender with Bridges now in Brooklyn. For now, they're going to turn to the likes of Torrey Craig, Josh Okogie, and Darius Baisley. And while the offense should be good enough for the Suns to have a negative offensive player like one of those 3 guys out there, and the length that Ayton and Durant provide should cover up some of what they lost, I fully expect them to see if the buyout market yields anyone who can help. But if they come up empty, it could mean that guys like Paul and Durant might have to take on more difficult defensive assignments, which could negatively impact their offensive production. And as good as this offense has the potential to be, it's still very reliant on guys who take a lot of tough 2-point shots. And prior to Durant's arrival, they were 27th in the NBA in free throw rate and second to last in shot attempts at the rim per play-by-play stats. That's a tough way to live in today's NBA. Though Durant was getting to the stripe at 7.3 times per game in Brooklyn, and his mid-range shots are effectively layup and dunks for him the way he's been shooting. So we'll see how it shakes out once he returns. So what does all this mean for the rest of the NBA? It means everyone from the West-leading Denver Nuggets all the way down to Durant's old pals in Golden State who are struggling to stay in playoff contention, they all should be nervous as hell, as should the Celtics and the Bucks, the prohibitive Eastern Conference title favorites. Think about it, guys. To beat the Suns, you're going to have to outscore a team led by Durant, Booker, and Paul, 3 multi-level scorers who can get their shots in a variety of ways and are going to be hell on any defense. To even have a chance against them, you have to be able to assign 3 Bridges-level defenders to them, and those players will still have to contribute offensively. As we head into the All-Star break, that team doesn't exist on paper in the West. If it remains the case after the break, when Durant returns, the expectations are that the Suns will become the conference favorites to reach the NBA Finals. Expectations and Kevin Durant, just like Anthony said.
Okay, it's kind of funny because I think Jokic could just do all 3 of those things currently at the point that he's playing. So Anthony talked about a team that reminded about the 2013-2014 Warriors when they started. Jay mentioned the 2018-2019 Warriors. So it's only fitting that my team is the 9th best team right now in the Western Conference. The
God, we set you up without even knowing it.
Actual 2022-2023 Warriors. They have a road record. I believe it was of 7-22 last time I checked.
Are insane, aren't they?
They're 29-29 overall. Obviously, it's tough going in San Francisco. But this team has just been, even though their numbers are about the same, injuries have hurt. Steph Curry has missed big chunks of the season and is back on the injured list now. They actually did very well the first time he's out, and they haven't done too well, including a loss to the Lakers last Saturday when he is out of the lineup. They also kind of rewrote two mistakes at the trade deadline, trading back for Gary Payton II, who was going to provide the big defense
Once
come
he's healthy.
playoff time because he's injured and he probably won't be back for at least a month and a half. There were some rumors that trade wouldn't have gone through, and they essentially had to give up on former number 2 overall pick James Wiseman. This was just not the right situation for James to come into. He still needs a lot of maturing. Off to Detroit he goes to actually make mistakes in the NBA that won't be under a microscope every 5 seconds. This is still a championship team, but it just seemed like something was off the moment Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole to begin the season for this team. And just remember, this is a team that even before last year's run, they were playing teams for the 2 seasons before that run, and that's why Steph Curry made that promise. Is like, don't let us get into the playoffs. We'll get hot. They called the playoffs the Warriors Invitational. Draymond's called it that all the time. But if this team continues at that pace, they're going to be back in the play-in, and you might not get a chance to go into the Warriors Invitational. As Jay said, Phoenix is going to have a ton of offensive talent that's going to make any matchup with Golden State. That's going to make almost any matchup to have basically a can you top this, and Golden State's going to have to be 100% healthy. Who knows if either team, honestly, especially with Chris Paul, is going to be 100% healthy, but that's the way of the NBA's war of attrition. The Warriors are living that right now, but the team is still on a great offensive pace. They're the only team that has 20 plus assists in a game this year. They've done it 3 times. No team has done it more than once, which is insane. So their offense is still on an elite level. Steve Kerr is still an elite coach, but for a team whose last rides, and we've seen last rides of the NBA don't end in championships, they end in disasters. This team's last ride might be coming, and it may not be a very pretty ending. But again, I picked Golden State to make the NBA championship, to make the NBA finals. Who knew that Philadelphia would have been my safer pick going into this point of the season? Someone should have given me that note. All right, guys. Age ain't nothing but a number, but by definition, points are actually exactly that. It's a number, and we're going to talk about it. When LeBron got his career points up to 38,390 last Tuesday, or about 2 weeks ago Tuesday, he became the top scorer for an NBA career. Now, if only he can get to exactly 40,000, I can actually remember this in the future instead of looking it up. Retire right then and there, buddy. That's all we ask. Okay, Anthony, we waited until this week to talk about this due to a certain big game that was going on in Glendale. What does this Braun achievement mean to you?
Wow, you know what? Well, number one, he's gonna break another record for most All-Star appearances this weekend.
And he's gonna get, by the way, and I just also know, he'll also get honored for that record at halftime of the All-Star game tomorrow as well.
Yeah, you know what it is to me is really the cherry on top to what has always been a historic Hall of Fame career. But when you think about the kid from Akron, Ohio, whose high school games is being broadcast on ESPN and was on the cover of Sports Illustrated once upon a time and being dubbed the chosen one, he's lived up to the expectations and at times exceeded those very lofty expectations that was on him from the starting line. I mean, from the word go, LeBron has done everything that people say that he really couldn't do. He was saying that there was the narrative of not being a clutch player and the pressure moments not being between too big for him. Oh, well, he has the most game winners in NBA playoff history. So that's out of the way, okay? When he can't win championships, he wins 4. He only can play with stars. He can only play with star players. Well, guess what? He goes back to Cleveland after winning 2 championships in Miami take that young team and lead it, and is able to lead it to the greatest finals comeback in league history in 2016. They say he couldn't win out west. He goes to Los Angeles, basically in the shadow of Kobe Bryant just retiring from that team, and is able to win another championship. It just seems like at this point, I think every time he has done something, he's had the critics and I call them out the Michael Jordan apologists out there who go to great lengths to kind of downplay every accomplishment he has done. And I remember why. Hey, look, I'm happy JJ Redick kind of put Stephen A. Smith in his place on First Take the day after he broke that record, because Stephen A. is one of those Jordan apologists that came out and was talking about Jordan scoring titles. And I'm like, yeah, he has 10. He's still not the all-time leading scorer. That means something. Like, you can't put somebody the greatest scorer of all time based on awards, and they're not the guy. They're not the top of the mountain. They're not the king of the hill. And I was happy JJ Redick, who has been a great addition to ESPN and a great podcaster, was able to kind of really bring reality and dive some cold water in that argument. But I really wish that instead of finding ways to downplay this man's career, we just start to appreciate what he has been able to do for over 20 seasons on the basketball court, and what he's been able to do off the court, and the example he has been able to set in both categories. I think I sent you a video of Giannis Antetokounmpo congratulating LeBron backstage and basically acknowledging, hey, look, we all look up to you, the younger guys, just been a shining example for the league for so long. And that's the impact that he's had, because Giannis Antetokounmpo is a Hall of Famer and a star in his own right, and to see him approach LeBron in that manner just says a lot about what he has done over this 20-year career. He's a billionaire. He started a school. He's done movies too. He's done it all. At this point, it's kind of like, okay, you completed the video game. Now you're just doing side missions. I like Grand Theft Auto to see how much of the game you can completely finish. Like, can you get that 100th percentile? But that's the one thing I walk away from LeBron James breaking the scoring mark, is the fact that instead of finding every reason, every excuse to take away from this man's career, we should just be embracing the fact that we're watching one of the greatest of all time and arguably the best all-around player of all time. Think about this. He's the all-time leading scorer. He's a top 5 in a sense. And the greatest player of his career, number 4, thank you, Jay. And his greatest signature moment was a chase down block in Game 7 of the NBA Finals that led to Kyrie Irving's go-ahead three-pointer moments later. Who knows how the possession plays out if the Warriors take the lead, if Kyrie Irving even takes a three-pointer, knowing that he had the cushion of the game still being tied if he missed. So I just think about this. It's like, look, I'll be 40 later this year, so I can always talk about this as a basketball fan. I have had the distinct honor of watching Michael Jordan's career, watching Dr. J towards the end of his career, and Kareem at the end of his. And that was another thing too, for us, the moment. It's not just acknowledging what LeBron James has done, but paying respect to the guys that came before him, the Bill Russells, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had the scoring record for so long, the Wilt Chamberlains, who had it prior to him. I think people, like I said, I think because we grew up watching Michael Jordan and we never thought we would see another generational talent be as dynamic and that dominating at times and just doing everything, that we just kind of condition it and just settle into, well, he's the greatest. There's no argument, but it's like, there's always room at the top there's always room in the penthouse for more to join the party. And I never understood that whole greatest argument, because it's like there's never a right answer for all of it, never a wrong answer.
There's not.
Like, look, we don't do it much for the NFL. We don't do it for Main Street Baseball. far because he realized there have been so many people who have laid the foundation for the current players, and they'll lay the foundation for the future generation. Why is it that we do it with the NBA and for us the greatest of all time? What, they can't be more than one?
Yeah, no.
Just, and I never understood that, but I really wish that people would take in and give LeBron his flowers while he's still here. And one of the things I always upset on, as a fan of Kobe Bryant, was that it took his tragic passing for people to appreciate the man he was, not just on the court, but the man off the court that we never got to fully see into, towards the later part of his life. So I just wish people would appreciate greatness and then here and now, and not wait till it's too late to give somebody their appreciation.
Amen.
and to let them know how much of an impact they have made, not just on themselves, but the people around them, and what they're doing for generations coming up in the future.
Yep.
Well said, Anthony. We're running close out of time. Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, LeBron breaking Kareem's all-time scoring record of 38,387 points, which stood for James's entire life on the planet. That still boggles my mind. It was inevitable, right? But that doesn't mean that the king is any less deserving of the accolades and the congrats he received, as Anthony so eloquently put it. But as someone who knows the history of how Kareem Abdul-Jabbar dominated the NBA for 2 decades and got to see some of that dominance en route to setting the record that James just broke, I'm glad that the man formerly known as Lou Alcindor is getting his due for his own place in the pantheon of all-time NBA greats. If you check our Twitter page, you'll see a link to a terrific story by The Athletic's David Aldridge on Kareem and LeBron breaking his record. Think about this, guys. About 5,000 players have suited up for the association, but until James, nobody ever really claimed close to challenging Kareem's record. Hell, Kobe, for all his brilliance over his 20-year career, still came up 5,000 points short. James was the fastest to 10,000, 20,000, and 30,000 points. He broke the record in 150 fewer games than Kareem, and barring any serious injury, LeBron will likely get to that 40,000 point threshold, which could possibly put this record out of reach forever. Here's what I found interesting, because I kind of hoped he would. James actually had intended to break the record by shooting Kareem's famous sky hook and practicing the shot.
He practiced it, by the way, 3 games.
Practicing the shot for more than a week prior to games. And once he reached 34 points against the Thunder, he tried to get into position on the block so he could catch a pass and go to the hook. Couldn't quite get there, so he had to settle for the fadeaway, which ironically enough was the very first shot he made as an NBA player back on October 10th of 2003. James gave props to Kareem that night, saying, quote, "To be able to be in the presence of such a legend as great as Kareem is very humbling." Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said he was thrilled that LeBron broke his all-time record. He wrote this: whenever a sports record is broken, including mine, it's time for celebration. It means someone has pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible to a whole new level. And when one person climbs higher than the last person, we all feel like we are capable of being more. And later, Kareem added, quote, "Bottom line about LeBron and me, LeBron makes me love the game again. And it makes me proud to be part of an ever-widening group of athletes who actively care about their community." Look, I give LeBron all the credit in the world. His legacy as a face on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA's all-time greats was secured a while ago. But adding all-time scoring leader to his Hall of Fame resume just burnished it even more. I know there will always be a subset of fans who will never admit that the king is the GOAT, and that's fine. But the rest of us, including Kareem, the man who laid the bricks for the chapel that LeBron now stands in, we know the truth.
Okay, so just a couple of Jordan for James stats before we get out of here. Points per shot attempt. The league average is 1.2 points per shot attempt throughout the past 40 years. James only missed it in year 1 and topped out in year 11. Year 11 at 1.54 points per game. Jordan was below that average 3 times, and his top points per shot attempt is 1.35, just to let you know on that one. Value over replacement. James 146.1, Jordan 116.1. Efficiency rating 27. I'm trying to think what the other one was. I don't remember offhand, but just numbers that are insane. That even the years ending for LeBron James are better than the years ending for Michael Jordan. I think LeBron, with all the hype that the guy had in the media day and age that we now live in, and the expectations, he's exceeded those expectations. He's going to go down as one of the top players in NBA history. We respect that. Just sometimes in this internet world, there's always going to be a hater of something. It sucks, and we could always be like the Captain Planet of respect and killing internet trolls one day at a time, but that's what makes it fun now and then. Yeah, Captain Planet's right over there on the Street Fighter shirt. Anyway, we're out of time. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steven Rabinowitz. I'm going to go a little bit different tonight. At ONTH Sportslines on Twitter to get all your information, including a link to this show. We linked an article, which we might refer to soon, on how baseball's new rules will be coming into spring training, and it's going to be a shit show. What else do we got up there, Jay?
Yeah, just this, I referenced the article on Kareem by David Aldridge, and just this morning I tweeted a link to a solid piece by The Athletic's Jason Jones on the Netflix documentary on NBA legend Bill Russell. The piece is worth the read, and the documentary is worth the watch.
All right, go to youtube.com/onthesportslines to see our vast catalog of what is not a shit show. We promise you, and what's more of a shit show than a live broadcast. Thank you for watching us on youtube.com/onthesportslines. See you next week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, everyone. Good
I
afternoon.
hate when people say good night in like 1:42 or night in the evening. But,